those. Should be fine. And kill that. Move that over there. Fantastic. Let me just do that. Oh, hey, Chris. Chris S. Can't believe I've made it live. I'm always asleep for this. That's in part, that's my fault. I'm doing this later than usual. I normally do it around 10 a.m. But I am running behind today. And cool, I'm about to kick off. So, good morning, everybody. It is Tuesday, the 9th of December. This is AI with Kyle. We're going to be running through the daily news and updates from the world of artificial intelligence, as well as answering live questions from the audience coming in from the private community on Circle, which is free to join. We launched over the weekend, from Twitter, from TikTok, and from YouTube. So hello to everybody who is tuning in live. All of these videos will also be available on YouTube after, and we're going to edit them up, make them nice and easy to access as well. And all of the information is covered in the newsletter that comes out tomorrow. So make sure you're subscribed to the newsletter, make sure you're in the community itself where we're discussing what happens in the live, and you can keep up to date with what is going on in the world of AI, because there is a lot of it. This week we are expecting a new ChatGPT model, codenamed Garlic, and probably going to be ChatGPT 5.2, maybe 5.5, we do not know yet. But we do know that it is a response to Gemini 3. Last week, Monday, OpenAI, creators of ChatGPT, were put into a code red by Sam Altman, basically said, hey, we need to pull our fingers out and we need to release a model that is going to blow people's socks off. And they paused all of their extra projects, so things like advertising, things like the health assistant, things like Pulse, ChatGPT Pulse, were all paused, and all of the focus, all of the manpower, all of the energy is going into making sure the model is better and making people happy, because they have been taking an absolute beating from from Google for the last couple of weeks, the last couple of months. So that is the big news later this week. It is not here yet. There's a lot of speculation going around. There's a lot of chat. There's a lot of what does this mean for the industry, but we don't know yet, and there's no point speculating that much. So I imagine, and this is speculation, it will probably come out on Thursday. OpenAI tend to do their releases on a Thursday. That's just what they've always done, and I imagine it will be very, very similar this time. But we'll find out. Maybe I'm wrong. In the meantime, there isn't that much happening in the world of artificial intelligence. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover a couple of big stories, two big stories, and then I'm going to look at the use of personas and roles inside of prompting. So when you prompt an AI, often you will say something like, you are a lawyer. Now, here is your instructions, and it puts the AI into a certain mode, a certain modality, which allows you to get better results. So Ethan Mollick has done a post saying, hey, actually, this isn't as useful as you think, and that's led to some discussion. So we'll get to that, and we'll talk about that, and that will be the main focus of the show. I'm also taking questions from anyone who comes in live, obviously. I'm not seeing any at the moment. So I'm going to jump into a piece of news which came out yesterday, and I haven't seen many people talking about this, which is surprising because this is huge. So Trump has given Nvidia the green light to sell advanced chips, AI chips, to China, mainland China. I don't know why this is not causing more of a stir. So previously, the Trump administration, and even before the Biden administration, had asked for restrictions on the Nvidia chips being sold to China, because Nvidia are basically the only game in town when it comes to GPUs, graphical processing units. And given the Chinese access to these chips would allow them to accelerate artificial intelligence and to catch up and to dominate. They've been doing pretty well without the Nvidia GPUs, to be fair. And what this restriction has meant is China has focused on domestic production, so getting Huawei up and running for GPU construction for machine learning chips, and also making models that are more efficient. So DeepSeek famously was trained on a much smaller number of GPUs than are used in America. Something like the Colossus data center from XAI that has, I believe, 50,000 H200 chips, and each of those is about £30,000. So a lot of money, a lot of energy, and basically brute forcing their way to a better model. China has not had that luxury. So there's been a roaring black market trade in getting Nvidia chips to China. Suspiciously, Singapore I forget the exact number, but Singapore purchases about 30% of all of Nvidia's chips, and Singapore is not a big country. So there's either cloud training data centers that are working for mainland, or those chips are being ported up to the mainland. That's speculation. I don't want to be libelous here or cause a scandal, but they're buying a lot of chips. Now, however, it looks like Trump and the US are relaxing restrictions. So, US President Donald Trump has announced that he will allow AI chip giant Nvidia to sell its advanced H200 chips to approved customers in China. The H200 are like the workhorse when it comes to GPUs. There are other ones like the H100, which was specifically created to sell to China, but it looks like the H200s are going to be allowed for direct sale. We will protect national security, create American jobs, and keep America's lead in AI, Trump said on social media on Monday. Very, very interesting, because part of the reason for not selling the chips to China was national security, and they actually have the AI, what's it called? The US AI bill. Let me see if I can find it. I've forgotten the name of it entirely, but it came out back in June or July, where Trump and the White House basically said that this is a strategic issue and we need to keep control of our supply chains, we need to keep control of AI dominance as a counter to China. This seems to be going the other way. So the decision will apply to other chip companies like AMD and come after extensive lobbying by Nvidia boss Jensen Huang. This is him pictured with Trump looking a bit bored in the background. Nvidia, both the world's leading chip firm and most valuable company, they hit $5 trillion briefly, I think they're just below at the moment, has found itself at the center of a geopolitical tug-of-war between the US and China in recent months, and has been banned from selling its most advanced chips, H200s, to Beijing. Trump reversed the chip selling ban in July, but demanded that Nvidia pay 15% of its Chinese revenues to the US government. I covered this previously, back in July. This is not a tariff. This is not a normal kind of duty or on imports and exports. This is specifically a revenue share, which is something we haven't seen. That is unprecedented for a government to say we want a revenue share in your sales. That's wild. And basically, both myself and a lot of people at the time were saying, well, that's basically a bribe. Giving a share of the revenue straight through to the US government is basically, here is cash to allow us to sell to China. What was really interesting at the time, though, is that this was announced. Hey, we're going to let our American chips be sold to China. Aren't you lucky? And we're going to collect 15% of the revenue. And Beijing actually responded with, no, we don't want any. Thank you very much. Which was an absolute power move. So you can see how Nvidia is stuck between selling to China, which will give them a huge market. It will absolutely open up the market and allow them to become even more dominant, even larger, and to have even more customers than they do have right now. Whilst at the same time, America and Trump and the White House wanting to keep the technology primarily for American companies. It is not helped by the fact that this is all tied up to Taiwan as well, which increases the geopolitical complexity of this, as you can imagine. But this is a absolutely huge piece of news, which I haven't seen many people covering. So here we go. Offering H200s to approved commercial customers vetted by the Department of Commerce strikes a thoughtful balance that is great for America, Nvidia said in its statement. The company's shares rose slightly on the news. That's surprising. Trump said 25% SIC will be paid to the US States of America in his post. So, the SIC here is $25%. Okay, so he wrote it wrong. So this is 25% rather than the 15% of the revenues that was agreed upon before. So it sounds like Nvidia has cut an even larger deal with the American government for 25% of their revenue, a huge amount, going straight to the US government. So this potential bribe, this revenue share that has been talked about before has grown. It's gone from 15% to 25%. I imagine we're going to see a lot more chatter about this. As I say, it's kind of flown under the radar, but this is potentially one of the biggest pieces of news of the year. I just haven't seen many people talking about it. But this allows China to have access to H200s, which they're getting at the moment through the black market or through kind of less than legal channels. But now they'll be able to open it up. There's this thing about, oh, we're only going to sell to, what do they call them? Approved customers. But as you can imagine, the approved customers can buy a lot of H200 chips and sell them on to non-approved customers. So it doesn't really matter. Hacked by Blarg saying Taiwan is way too close to China. How on earth is that supposed to work? Yeah, unfortunately, Taiwan is very, very much wrapped up in all of this. So that does really make this a bit of a tinderbox, unfortunately. Okay, the other big piece of news, which again, I haven't seen many people talk about this. This is from the Hollywood Reporter, which I don't normally pull into my stories, but I thought this was worthwhile discussing. So Netflix are in the process of acquiring Warner Brothers. That by itself is an absolutely huge piece of news. That is an old school film studio that's been around for, God, I don't even know, 100 years maybe, being purchased by a new upstart, a streaming service, a company that used to send out DVDs that destroyed Blockbuster and then became an absolute giant of a company by streaming media. The Hollywood Reporter is pointing out something that I think a lot of people have missed. One other reason to buy the Warner Brothers library is that it is an asset, it's a data asset for training artificial intelligence. We know that Netflix are experimenting with dipping their toes into the water of AI, but to do so requires having a huge library of content, being able to put in all these characters that have intellectual property attached to them, being able to train on all these episodes and all these films, and then releasing artificial intelligence versions of these episodes of these films. This might be part of the play for Netflix because they need larger libraries of content that they actually own. A lot of the stuff on Netflix that is not produced by Netflix directly is that they wouldn't be allowed to train on it because they don't necessarily have the rights. But if they purchase a whole studio, they suddenly have the rights to train on and to produce derivative works from the Warner Brothers library, which is extensive, absolutely huge. So a key asset that Netflix could... what's going on here? A key asset that Netflix could be eyeing in the Warner Brothers deals is one few people are talking about, an AI trove. Among the most important aspects of the coming automated age, say forward-looking insiders, whatever that means, is a rich well of content going back many decades, either to train your own studio on or to give consumers to play with. Oh, that's a really good point. Being able to create versions, like personalized versions of shows, and giving people access to the tools to do that is something you can do if you own the IP rights. Warner Brothers has it, Netflix doesn't, and if the deal goes through, the streamer will. Netflix executives on an investor call Friday morning announced a lucrative deal, didn't note this point explicitly. Co-chief executive Ted Sarandos just said innovation several times, while he and others alluded to world building, which is an AI concept. But the subtext was there. Since technology relies on a massive library, Netflix's AI efforts just got a big boost. So this is speculative. This doesn't necessarily exist, but I think this is a part of the deal that we do need to be paying attention to as well. However, we don't know if this is going through because there is now another bid coming from Paramount. I believe it's Paramount. That only just came in yesterday. So it might not be Netflix purchasing it. It might be another company. Let me hop over to this. Why don't you talk about Copilot? We use it at my work due to the security situation. It'd be great to hear more about their capabilities of progression. The main reason I don't talk about Copilot that much is that it's not very good. So Copilot is built upon ChatGPT because Microsoft now own 27% of OpenAI, the creators of ChatGPT. So you have the Microsoft servers at the bottom, the Azure servers, you have the ChatGPT model on top of that, and then you have Copilot, which is basically a reskinned version of ChatGPT. As of about a month ago, however, Copilot can now use Claude. So they struck a deal with Anthropic. Claude is, I believe, better than ChatGPT. However, in both cases, Microsoft, in their reskinning, in their reformulation, their fine-tuning of ChatGPT, they seem to have stripped out some of its capabilities. So whenever I talk to people from my personal tests, we all find that Copilot is just not as able, not as capable as ChatGPT. You can do a lot more with ChatGPT. ChatGPT has more functionality and features. The main benefit of Copilot is the security, the fact that it's built into Microsoft 365 Office, no, 365 Microsoft Office, whatever it's called, and the fact that in certain enterprises, that is all you can use. So I used to do trainings for Copilot as well, and I've actually stopped doing them because so many of the trainings were either people who thought AI wasn't very good because their only exposure to it had been through Copilot, which isn't very good, or people who had used other AIs like ChatGPT and they'd used Claude, and they were annoyed that they had to use Copilot at work. So a lot of them were using ChatGPT on the side because Copilot wasn't very good. That said, I think Copilot's in a really good position. Microsoft are in a really good position to make something of it because of their ecosystem. So this is, let me pull up the Microsoft 365 Copilot. The kind of the diagram, the promise of it is really cool. Let me see if I can find it. Here it is. And so I love this idea. This is the potential for Copilot, is for it to sit at the beginning, the core of an organization, and to be surrounded by all of these other applications, all of these other elements from the Microsoft ecosystem, all of which talking to this central Copilot, to this central artificial intelligence. That's a really exciting idea. However, in reality, at least for now, and it's only been a couple of years, the reality is all of these kind of edge uses. So we have, Visual Studio, we have Power BI, we have Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, OneNote, SharePoint, shopping, etc. All of these things around the edges have their own AIs, none of which are very good. So you end up with, I don't know, 50 different implementations of Copilot. None of them are very good. None of them are leading in terms of the technology. So, for example, PowerPoint slide generation using AI is terrible compared to Gamma. And Gamma is a specialized a specialized slide generating tool. It's terrible compared to Notebook LM, which now has the ability to generate slides. And that's the same for a lot of the pieces of the Microsoft ecosystem. They're just not very well implemented. So the promise is huge. The idea of having AI that works across the whole organization, it builds up this corpus of knowledge, is really exciting. But the practical implementation of it so far is it leaves a lot to be desired. So that's why I don't tend to talk about Copilot that much, just because it's not really at the cutting edge of what's happening. And the only people who use it tend to be people who have to because of the organization and the enterprise. But I think there's a huge amount of, I have optimism for this ecosystem as a whole. Could be amazing. And Microsoft just needs time, I think, to pull it off. Let me hop over to questions on TikTok. Copilot is struggling in the market. Yeah, I mean, Copilot has an advantage here because a lot of organizations, a lot of enterprises use the Microsoft ecosystem already. So it has a built-in distribution in the same way that, lots of enterprises use Google Workspace. So that means Gemini has immediate distribution into those ecosystems. But I've met organizations who are now toying with the idea of moving away from Microsoft because the AI implementation is so weak. obviously moving off an ecosystem, moving from Microsoft to Google, or from Google to Microsoft, or to one of the other alternatives is a huge decision. But the fact that they were even thinking about it because of the AI implementation that Microsoft have so far is quite telling. Because moving your enterprise from one provider to another at that scale is, I mean, I'd rather just start a new company at that point. It's just such a big job. Troy says, "Hope you're well. I'm a lecturer. Good to have you here." Let me scroll back up through TikTok. How are you so informed? What job do you have? That's nice of you to say. Maybe I'm just good at blabbing. I don't have a job. I haven't had a job since I was 18 or so. I've always run my own businesses. So my first business was actually, well, my first business when I was 11 or so was selling pirate video games, but don't tell anyone about that. But I've always had my own businesses. My first proper job was I set up a TV station in Vietnam when I was 20 something. And then since then, I've had a digital marketing agency, I've had multiple online businesses, and now I've pivoted more into the world of artificial intelligence. So going from digital marketing to AI with a focus on digital marketing and growing businesses. So I've never had a job. I've always run my own businesses instead. And I'm knowledgeable because 3 years ago, when the big ChatGPT, the first big public release of ChatGPT came out, I remember looking at it, playing around with it like a lot of us did in that first week, and thinking, it's not very good yet, but I can see this being a threat to my business, my digital marketing business, a year or so from now. So at that time, I just started reading and writing as much as I could. I started a newsletter. I've written over 500,000 words on the use of artificial intelligence for business specifically. So if you go into my website, there's multiple courses. This is all free, and a catalog of playbooks. Each of these playbooks, like Start to Create a Business, SEO Micro Tools, AI Training for Businesses, AI Fundamentals, these were all written in my newsletter initially. And you can see like this one here is 15,000 words. So that was me writing 5 newsletter issues, each of about 3,000 words. A huge amount of content. So over the last couple of years, I've just written and written and written about AI. And that's how I've managed to build up a knowledge base. That said, I am an interested amateur. I sit in the world between artificial intelligence and the world of online business and entrepreneurship. I am not an AI expert. I do not, I have an interest in and I understand some of the concepts of things like machine learning, but I don't have a PhD or computer science degree or anything like that. So I am, like a lot of us, working this out as I go along. But I think it's an exciting time because it is a new technology, and humanity's kind of working out what we need to do with it. When I say it's a new technology, I don't mean AI. We've had that for ages. I mean generative AI in its current state. I'm not going to get into details there. There's too much there. Marius says, "Hi Kyle, I'm a developer. Can you talk about marketing, vibe marketing, through the lens of a developer?" So I'm not a developer. I am a marketer, actually. I basically love building products, but I suck at getting people to find my products. Thanks. So this is a huge, huge problem now. Because we have tools like Lovable, these guys. We have the ability to build so much, and I'm building more than I've ever built before. But what that means is the market is oversupplied. And if you go to an AI tool directory, it's just full of projects, very similar projects, a lot of them as well, a lot of which have just gone to die because the marketing has not been worked out. Increasingly, therefore, marketing and distribution is what matters. If you follow Greg Eisenberg over on Twitter, he talks about this all the time, basically saying that building is now the easy part. Anyone can get their idea and they can build a minimum viability product or a proof of concept. Will it be perfect? No, but it's enough to get it out to market. So what this means is the difficulty is not the building element. The difficulty is now, how the hell do I get people to use what it is I've built? And that's going to get harder and harder and harder as it becomes easier and easier and easier to build, because more people are going to enter the market. So how to do it? I highly recommend building in public. So have a look at someone like Jack Fricks. This is his website, jackfricks.com. He's built a few applications. He's built Postbridge, a social media scheduler, and Lovely, which is a really cute one. He built it for his fiance primarily, and he's launched it. And let's see how much money he's making. He talks about everything very, very openly. So if you follow him on Twitter in particular, I think this is the way to go, is to talk about your process, talk about the building, and to start marketing before you even have a product. Well, there he is, and his fiance. So there we go. This is his new one. Oh no, this is videos. So he just talks very openly about money. He talks about marketing. He talks about what he's building. He talks about the journey. And what that has allowed him to do is to build up this following. He's got 67,000 people here. These people are interested in whatever he builds. So if he's got these two particular products at the moment, Postbridge and Lovely, he will, I'm sure, pivot into something else in the future. Maybe a SaaS, maybe a agency, whatever. It doesn't really matter. People are following him for him, and they are kind of now in his orbit. That gives him a couple of things. One, when he has an idea, he can go online and say, hey, I'm thinking about this idea. What do people think? Very quickly, that allows you to verify whether the idea is worth pursuing or not. I don't know about you, but you probably have lots of ideas every single day. And the question is now, oh God, which one should I build? Because we can build them all now because we have these tools at our disposal. So where should we focus? If you have an audience, you can go to them beforehand, before you build a single thing, and you say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Is this something that you would be interested in? And you know very quickly if there's kind of an appetite for it. So I've done this myself. I have an audience of about 250,000 now, 250,000. At the beginning of 2024, I put out a tweet, I put out a message on TikTok and in my newsletter saying, hey, I currently give workshops to businesses. When I go and give a workshop to a business, teaching them about artificial intelligence, I get paid about £1,000 an hour. I'm thinking about packaging up my materials and teaching other people how to go and give my workshops to companies, so you can charge $1,000, £1,000 an hour. Would people be interested? And I had hundreds of people say, yeah, that sounds really cool. That tells me this is something I should pursue. So then me and my business partner, we got to work and we built out a product. We pre-launched it, and then we did an early bird, and then basically built it on the fly with the first cohort coming through. And we could do all of that because we already have an audience in place. So any product that you're building, any business that you're building, you need to think about that audience, and you need to think about distribution from day one. It is super, super important. I've actually, it's reminded me, I've written a course here called the 10-week AI Summer Camp. It's not summer anymore, but you can still do it. But the first part of it is your first niche, so working out your basic business idea. The second part is start to build it in public, and start to talk about what it is you're building. And then the third part is refining your idea. Then it goes into building, marketing, etc., etc. But literally, the second part is you need to start to document this, talk about this, show people what you are working on, and start to build up that audience as soon as possible so you can test ideas, and when it comes to launch, you have people you can sell to. Otherwise, it's really, really hard. Marketing basically breaks down to you either build an audience using content, doing live streams like this, videos, etc. You buy an audience, that is advertising. That is fine if you have cash, but you need capital to do that. Or you borrow an audience. You talk to other people who have an audience and you say, hey, this is what I've built. Do you want to promote it for me? And we split the money 50-50 or whatever it is. Those are kind of your three options. And if you don't have cash, if you do not have capital, then buying an audience is difficult. If you do not have connections, then and you don't have a reputation in your industry, then borrowing an audience is difficult. So the best thing you can do is you build your own audience and you start that ASAP. The best way is pick this up and shoot videos. So TikTok, and Instagram. Doing short videos, learning how to talk to camera, learning how to explain what you're doing, what you're working on in 30 seconds is so powerful. There's a guy called Yoni. Let me put him up. He's a great example of this. Yoni will do it, who did this on Instagram. He has 189,000 followers, and you can see here he's got day 506, day 505, day 504, day 503. He just has done one video per day every day for a year and a half. And he started doing this before he had a product. And then this is his product. I've forgotten the name of it. It's a brain rot, which he launched maybe a year into this experiment. So he's a great example of just picking up the camera. The first few days being like, I don't know what I'm doing. That's fine. These videos are rubbish. I want to build something with AI. No idea what it is, but I will build something. And then he just kept doing it for now 500 days, and he's going to keep on going. Let's see, his 2025 goals were $1 million of revenue, $1,000 monthly recurring revenue, own 3 properties, that's awesome, 100k followers across all platforms, he's definitely done that, read 12 books, and 265 bench press. I'm assuming that's pounds, must be. Unless he's an absolute beast. So yeah, that is my very long-winded advice, is you start to build your audience first, regardless of what your product is. You build it around you and your journey, and then whatever product you build, and you will build lots of different products, and they will not all hit. Whatever you build, you have that built-in audience so that you can go to them and say, hey, this is what I have. I thought you were like 25. No, no, I'm not. I'm in my late 30s. I'm old. I started that TV station years ago when I was 21. But that would have been, God, I don't know, decades ago. Cool. So I want to have a look at, let me check other questions quickly, because I've been blethering. But thank you, Marius. No, thank you, because there's not much AI news today, so a question like that is great. And really useful to me. If Marius, hop into the community as well. So I think you're watching on YouTube right now. If you go to AI with Kyle, then join community. We have a community, and we're talking about these kind of questions in there as well. So come and ask that question as well, and I will continue to talk at you like that. This is my job. It's fine. I don't mind. Atari said, did my question come through? Let me check. I need to scroll back, but I did not see it. I said you said you're a lecturer, but I didn't see your question. Oh, he says, I'm a lecturer. That's all I see. So maybe send it again? Yeah, I don't see it. So yeah, Marius, come to AI with Kyle, join the community, and say hi, say, hey, it's me, and so I know it's you. And that's where we're continuing these kind of discussions, because it's a big question. It's a big question that a lot of people have, is, hey, I built something, now what? And it's the actual hard part of the business, is working out how to sell it to, who to sell it. Right. So I wanted to look at, let me get rid of this. So Ethan Mollick, who you should all follow, he's fantastic. He's a writer, he wrote Co-Intelligence. He's a professor at Wharton, I believe it is, and just a very smart guy talking about the kind of impacts of artificial intelligence on us as humans and how we're going to work with it, how we're going to live with AI moving forward. So he has done a test. So he said, we tested one of the most common prompting techniques, giving the AI a persona to make it more accurate. We found that telling the AI you are a great physicist does not make it significantly more accurate at answering physics questions, nor does you are a lawyer make it worse. So they're basically saying that there is no impact of giving it a role, of giving it a persona. It does not improve the accuracy of the answer specifically. So they use GPQA, which is a benchmarking, and MMLU Pro, and then gave it various prompts, and they gave it with and without the domain persona. So instead of saying you are a domain expert in law, or you are a physicist or whatever, they tested it with and without that to see if there was any impact, and no, there was no impact in the accuracy of the results themselves. So lots of people are reacting to this, saying, this doesn't really stack with my experiences, basically, and people are questioning the methodology. These results are cooked smaller models. They're using cooked smaller models. Anthropic and Google both publish prompt documentation that provide a persona in the prompt, and saying it does, which is true. So if we go over to Anthropic's prompt engineering guidelines, which is worth looking at, they say the sixth one here is give Claude a role. Like, make sure you tell Claude what type of role, what type of persona you want it to take on. So the official advice from Anthropic, from Google, from OpenAI is you should do this. So people are wondering, like, well, why is this paper from Ethan Mollick showing something else? What I think is happening here is when we give it a role, when we give it a persona, we're not necessarily expecting it to give us more accurate answers. We are instead using that as a way to focus it, to focus its attention. Because an LLM like Claude or ChatGPT can act as, it can role play, it can take on the persona of pretty much anything. That's kind of what makes them amazing. But at the same time, if you don't give it that specificity, if you don't give it some guidelines about this is what I want you to be right now during this question or during this exploration, then it will tend towards the generic. By giving a role, by giving it a persona, we are basically focusing it down on this huge set of possibilities that it could acting. We're focusing it down to, okay, now you are a physicist, or now you are a sales copywriter helping me for a web page, etc. And that's just going to focus everything. And as you know, the more context we give AI is generally the better the performance is. And a lot of the mistakes or a lot of the hallucinations come when we don't necessarily give it enough context, we don't give it enough details to work with, and it starts to fill in the gaps itself. If we give it a persona, we're closing the space for those gaps to exist in. So interestingly, Claude or Anthropic are saying it does actually increase accuracy. So they're saying in complex scenarios like legal analysis or financial modeling, role prompting can significantly boost Claude's performance. That is the official line. But Ethan is saying, no, that's not what happens. Instead, it's something else. So he says, I didn't see them test personas or show they improve accuracy. I know they both use personas at time. I just don't know if they've tested them. So Ethan is saying that maybe Anthropic are just making this up, basically, or at least they don't have evidence for this. But I thought this was a really interesting discussion because this is something that comes up a lot. It's like, should we be using prompt frameworks? Should we be using personas? And the answer to all of these things is always just try it. Try it in different ways. Try in different chats with the same prompt, but with a slightly different structure. So one will have a persona, one will not have a persona, and see which works better for you. Because we can do benchmarks until the cows come home. It does not matter if you subjectively find something works better for you and your workflow and what you are using artificial intelligence for. So that is the same for all these benchmarks. They are fascinating to see. They're great for marketing. They're interesting to discuss. But ultimately, what matters is your usage of the AI. And if you find adding a persona, adding a role leads to a better prompt, do it. Do it. Whatever works for you. I wanted to flag it up though because it's an interesting debate. It's also a good chance for me to show you the Claude. There we go. The Claude prompt engineering and overview. This gets quite heavy because it is like proper prompt engineering for when you're building software. But this is still very useful as a reference guide. And all of the main models have this. So Gemini, ChatGPT, and Claude all have documentation telling you how best to prompt them. With all of them, though, it's kind of always just about communicating. If you can communicate clearly what it is you want, provide any additional context that is required, express the instructions step by step, then you're going to get better results from AI. And that's why AI, or generative AI, is so exciting, is because it's a communication skill. It's not a pure technical skill. It's about the ability to get something from your head, get it out into the AI, which if you studied humanities or you're a leader or a writer or a speaker, is really exciting because it's not just about code anymore. Advertising in Gen AI, what do you think? I think it would be a disaster if it happens. I mean, it's going to happen. They need to make some money. So I think, I know I pull this up a lot, but we have to look at the Google revenue breakdown. So Google, we'll use Google as an example. Google right now are in an existential crisis, basically, because all of their money, so you can see Google search and other is 56 or 57% of revenue. Google network, that is also advertising, is 10%. So that's about 70%. Yeah, 70% of their revenue comes from advertising. Same with Meta. So Meta and all the social media companies and Google are advertising companies. They're not tech companies. So Google makes 10% of their revenue from Google Cloud. And 10% from Google Ads. So that's more advertising. So 70-80% of their revenue is ads. And then they have some subscriptions. They have, I don't know, some licensing fees from Samsung for Android, maybe. But that's tiny. That's tiny compared to the majority of their cash coming from advertising. Exactly the same for Meta. Facebook and Instagram are advertising platforms first and foremost. They're not technology companies, they are advertising companies. What this means is these companies need to replace that revenue, especially Google. So as people start to stop using search and start to use generative AI instead to access information, Google's revenues will collapse. So Google needs to cannibalize their own revenues from search advertising, which is this huge yellow chunk here. They need to cannibalize their own cash cow in order to survive, because this is going to disappear. This will disappear over the next decade. So they're in a tough position where they need to release AI tools which are killing themselves existentially, but they are the next generation of how we access information, and they need to work out how to monetize that. So they can monetize it by charging us subscriptions. That's what that's what all the AI companies are doing right now. So it's $20 or $200 a month. You can make money from that. The amount of money required, though, is huge. And somebody did the mathematics on ChatGPT, and to break even, they're going to have to get their subscriptions up to kind of Netflix level. They need to become pretty much endemic globally, with everybody using and paying for ChatGPT for them to be able to afford their burn rate at the moment. And that's not going to happen for years and years, if at all. So the most obvious way for them all to make money is advertising. They have a huge amount of personalized data on us. They know more than us than Google search could ever know about us. They just have a rich tapestry of what we do, what we're interested in, our ailments, our sicknesses, depending on how much information you put in. Hell, some people have hooked their email accounts into their AIs. They've hooked their documentation into AI. That is all there for the taking in terms of advertising information. So the amount of money they can make by inserting dynamic adverts, by inserting personalized adverts into our AI results is so tantalizingly huge that I can't imagine any of them are going to ignore it. What I think is going to happen, though, is nobody wants to be first. ChatGPT, it was last week, people were finding adverts in ChatGPT for Peloton and Target, and the internet flipped. Absolutely flipped. They're like, well, I'm cancelling my ChatGPT subscription and I hate this and I'm moving to Gemini, etc. That is the risk. Whoever goes first is going to have to take all of that hatred, and they will potentially demolish their own model. Yahoo, this happened to Yahoo back in, I guess, the 90s. early 2000s, Yahoo got greedy with their advertising and they started to serve up adverts at the top of Yahoo search that were not declared as adverts. You could buy an advert and it would just look like an organic listing. When people found out, Yahoo lost their reputation basically, and people shifted over to Google because Google were like, we're not going to do any of that. We're never going to engage in those shenanigans. We'll make sure you know it's an advert. And so Yahoo tanked and Google ascended. Something similar could happen to whoever introduces adverts into their AI first. It's probably still going to be ChatGPT though, because OpenAI need to make money. They are hemorrhaging money, and Sam Altman has to keep going back to the investors and saying, hey, I need another $200 billion. This is awkward, but I need $500 billion, please. Google don't have to do that. Google have this business right here. They have search, and they're going to continue to make search revenues for the next few years at least. They have cash reserves. They own their vertical, so they own their own TPUs, so they don't have to buy from Nvidia. They own the cloud for training their models, hosting their models, inference. They own the application layer. So I'm currently viewing this through Google Chrome, as are most people. Most people are using Chrome around the world. It's about 70%. They have Android, has 70% penetration as well on the mobile markets. And in terms of search traffic and search volume, I think about 60-70% goes through Google as well. Google search engine. So they are sitting pretty right now. They can afford to wait and wait for ChatGPT to release adverts into their ecosystem, for everybody to absolutely flip and say, I'm never using ChatGPT again. You betrayed my trust. I can't believe you're using my information to train, to serve me adverts. What the hell is this? People will get furious, leave ChatGPT in droves, cancel their subscriptions, especially if they put ads in paid subscriptions, move over to Gemini, move to Claude, move to wherever, it doesn't really matter, as long as they're off ChatGPT. And then 5 years down the line, a couple of years down the line, Google can start to introduce sponsored listings, adverts, banner ads, AI overviews that push you in a certain direction directly into their ecosystem. And they will not bear the brunt of the anger in the same way that OpenAI does. If I was a Google, that's what I would be doing. I would be sitting and waiting for OpenAI to basically choke themselves out by having to introduce adverts early, by making everyone angry, by absolutely tanking yourselves, and then Google can, a couple of years down the line, when it's all settled down, introduce adverts and replace this Google search revenue. I think this is not a question of if, it is a question of when. And they'll all be having very, very detailed discussions about when they can introduce adverts without it murdering their service offer. I expect we're going to see it in 2026, so definitely. And I think ChatGPT will be the first. Cancelled by YouTube says, must admit, I see an advert, I ban them in my head. Yeah. But OpenAI need to make some money. They're in a very difficult position where they have to keep raising money to keep the lights on and to keep training the best models on Earth. But there is no way for them to reach profitability at the moment. And the amount of money they are raising, the amount of money they are spending is so gargantuan that eventually the market, well, it already is, the market's going to be like, well hang on, how are you going to make a return? What's your business model here? What is your return on investment? And it's going to be advertising. So they're going to have to launch it at some point, and it's going to be a really rough week for them. In my opinion, we shouldn't shun OpenAI or any other model to do advertising. If we let Google starve out the competition, it's bad for innovation in the long run. Yes, 100%. Full disclosure, I have Google shares, so if you want to pump it, go ahead from a personal perspective. But for the broader environment, it's better for us to keep the competition. 100%. Competition's good. Unfortunately, Google they already own monopolies in search, kind of in mobiles. I know 30% or 25% is Apple, iOS. but they're 70%. So globally, they have an Android monopoly, sort of. That's less of a strong one. And Chrome, they have a monopoly. Again, it's about 70%. So they're always being investigated by the antitrust. In fact, I think there was a new one. Oops, Daisy. There was a new antitrust against them. What just happened there? Which I'll cover tomorrow, but there's a new antitrust suit against Google. Here we go. EU opens antitrust inquiry over Google's AI search summaries. So this has always been leveled at Google, and for good reason. They're so dominant in so many markets that the Google lawyers are sitting pretty, let's put it that way. They're always fighting antitrust suits. So we've opened an investigation into potential anti-competitive conduct by Google. The investigation will assess, the investigation will assess whether Google has breached EU competition rules by using web publishers' content for artificial intelligence purposes. Okay, so this is AI overviews then, for scraping all of the websites on Earth, which we know they do already because that's how they index for Google search. It's based on crawlers and spiders that go and look at all the information. So it looks like the EU are going to be investigating them for using that same information, that crawled information, to train Gemini, basically, which then serves up AI summaries, which it does. At the top, you now have an AI overview. You can chat to the AI overview. It's basically putting Gemini 3 right at the top of the search page. Yes, they definitely did this. The question is whether or not this is legal or not. So that's going to be another interesting lawsuit for Google. But this is just a cost of doing business when you are Google. But I agree with you 100%, Chris, that competition is good. We want competition. And that's why AI is so exciting, is because we have Google, we have OpenAI, we have Anthropic, and we have XAI to a certain extent. And every month or so, we have a new best model, and it cycles, and they're all competing. They're all fighting each other. And then we have China on the other side, who have DeepSeek, Qwen, Kimi, who are putting out really strong models too, and it adds another layer of competition. That's fantastic. It's fantastic for us as consumers because we're going to keep getting better models, and it gets better and better and better. So I agree. It would kind of suck if Google chokeholds the rest of the market, buys Anthropic, which they could do, and basically owns AI. That would not be good for the consumers, and it would be terrible for competition, because the amount of money needed to train these models is now so immensely high. You need hundreds of billions, if not moving into the trillions now, in order to build and market and run inference for these models. It just requires obscene amounts of money, which is why there's only, realistically, 10 AI companies who are building frontier level models, and that's including China. Very few. Very, very, very few. Awesome. So, I think that is me. Yeah, that's been about an hour. Considering there hasn't been much news, not bad. Thank you, Marius, for your question in particular, which allowed me to talk for 15 minutes about marketing. Again, all of this is going to be available on YouTube. Make sure you are subscribed. We are at, I like to check this every day, I'm not obsessed, we are at 10,700 subscribers. So doing pretty great. And make sure you subscribe for the newsletter as well. So the newsletter is totally free, and it gives you a summary of what has been covered in the previous live. So you get all of the resources. You get, if I talk about paper, for example, like this one here, I will give you a link to that paper. I'm also creating a lot more infographics like this one. So yeah, make sure you are subscribed to that, totally free. As well as that, there is a community. We have launched it over the weekend, and you can join that at aiwithkyle.com, and that will give you access to the newsletter and to the community, and they kind of work together. So you watch the live, you can read the newsletter, you can watch the videos, and then we discuss them inside of the community. So it all kind of comes together, and it's a good way to keep up to date with what the hell is going on in AI, because it's a lot. Cool. So make sure you're subscribed. Totally free. It's all totally free. There's also a free challenge, a getting ready, AI ready in 5 days, free challenge, which is available here, as well as a bunch of courses, a catalog that's absolutely full of playbooks, and honestly, more than you could ever need. We're currently working on helping people to work their way through this material, which is a problem because there is just so much of it. But it's all available for free, and I hope a useful learning resource for you guys. Yeah, awesome. Are you using TikTok Studio? Yes, I am. Right, I'm going to hop off YouTube, but I'm going to be with you still TikTok.